Good morning, John from Vietnam. Thank you so much for spending your early afternoon in New Zealand to spending your time with us and the audience of the Inside Sharing Show. I was surprised that I thought you in the States, but then realizing that you're in the country that we love to reside when we're in the field in the next couple of years. So thank you so much for joining and sharing your journey with us today.
My thanks for inviting me. It's exciting to be here. I'm looking forward to it very much.
John, in our culture, is a very respectful way for our audience. If you can help us to do the introduction of who you are and the works that you do, would you please do that for our audience, please?
Sure. So my name is John Philpin. If you might be able to tell by my accent, I'm of British descent originally, but essentially moved to California in the early 90s because I was working in software sales and marketing. So that's where I built my career, and no better place than California to do that at those times. And I spent the next sort of 25 years or so really at what I call the pointy end of business. Has a great new piece of software. Now who's going to take it on board? So there's marketing roles, sales roles, business partnerships, etc. That my final position for that was CEO of a small public company, which we eventually sold, and that was about 5-6 years ago. And I decided at that point to say, okay, well, I've done my time, as it were, in the corporate world, and what really can I now do that's going to be different and something that adds to the general knowledge of the world, if you will, if that doesn't sound too grand. But of course, I've got a background in sales and marketing, so I can't just suddenly become a rock guitarist for a band or something like that. So how do I take what I've got and transition it, which is where the organization I've got today is something which I call People First. And People First is this idea of recognizing that the onslaught of technology into our everyday lives is not going to go away. It's not going to stop. So how do, on the one hand, people manage that onslaught? How do they look at all this technology that's hurtling towards them and manage that process? And on the other side, how do companies really bring technology in a respectful way? Because there's no doubt that sort of companies becoming more efficient through technology. How do they have respect for the people inside of their organization to continue to do what they need to do as a company, but at the same time not just reject people out of hand, because there are roles for people in the future. So that really became my mission around what I talk about, what I write about, what I present about, and so on and so forth. So it really is a culmination of, I've always understood what technology is about and where it's going. I've always been very customer centric. It's always been, thanks very much for the great idea, technologists, but why would a business care about that? So I can do that bridge quite well. It's now, let's do it in a respectful way.
Wow. Thank you very much for sharing your journey in about 3 minutes, summarize of everything happened in the past decades, right? So allow us to slowly understand it. So let's examine it together. And John, let us bring you all the way back to when you were young. Because when we're young, we always have dreams of the life that when we grow up we're gonna do and we're gonna be living in. So back when you was very very young age, and still you're young, so
Thank you.
So all the way back then, what's the words a young version of John, dream of a career, a life when you grow up, it's going to be?
So I think, first I'm an army brat. So I was born abroad. My father was in the forces. And I spent the first 10 years of my life, really, if it's another year, it's another school, it's another house. And lived in places like Singapore and East Africa. I was born in Germany. I lived in Wales. So my memory of those times really was just, forever transitioning, forever moving. Okay, new group of friends to have, move on to the next, and so on. And I don't really recall thinking, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a fireman or a doctor or whatever those things are that kids want to do as they're growing older. But I did have a natural inclination for maths.
Mm,
Um, so when I went through my education, I kind of, the arts, humanities of my world disappeared. I did double maths and physics for my A levels. I did maths for my degree. And it was really only in my early 20s that I started thinking, okay, so now what? I'm now out in the big wide world and I have this maths degree. My father, when he left the forces, had become a teacher. My mother was already a teacher, and I sort of didn't particularly want to go into the teaching profession. I definitely wasn't cut out to go into the military, so there's no way I was going to be following my parents into
mm,
what they did. They were always incredibly supportive of me. I did a year of accounting when I first came out of college because I
mm,
thought, well, what do you do maths? Oh, you count things, accounting, great, that will make sense. I did it for about a year to realize that it really wasn't for me. It wasn't what I wanted to do. But I still wasn't sure. But I got a job. I went back into the university system looking at jobs and came out of that as a salesperson.
mm,
And that probably is where I got this initial idea of um, doing what I've always done with my life, because sales and marketing to me, if done well, if done properly, is not about pushing your ideas onto somebody else and saying buy, 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 you know, the
mm,
used car salesman kind of idea. It's much more to do with problem solving. It's listening much more than anything to what somebody's trying to do and understanding from your arsenal of things that you have in your pocket, how can what I got help this business to do what it's doing?
mm,
And so that became sort of the foundation a lot of what I did. And it's interesting because people these days talk about, you know, when what they call social sales came in,
mm,
right? And they sort of thought, oh, everybody now has to get into social sales. My personal belief is that social sales has always been there. Social sales is how selling started. The corner shop in Roman times,
mm,
they knew their customers. They didn't need software to help them understand who their customer was. They knew them. But what happened with the industrialization of the world is that sales, which is a very human activity,
mm,
started to become industrialized as well. And we started to try to use machines to predict human behavior and so on and so forth. And we
mm,
lost sight of the salesperson wanting to get to know the customer and to get to know the problem. And we just
mm,
started pushing product down the hill.
mm,
Social sales changed that. But for me, all it was about was really going back to foundational principles, which is education, which
mm,
is about learning what somebody else is facing and doing,
mm,
putting yourself into their shoes and saying, how can I help? And interestingly enough, though I never wanted to follow my parents into teaching, that essentially is what good sales is about. It's
mm,
about teaching. It's about saying, you know, that problem you're trying to solve in your business? There's a better way to do that. Bear with me, let me explain, and show them a route through. And from there, you build a relationship, you build a position of trust, and onwards and onwards. So, you know, as I say, to me, it emerged slowly. My parents were both very supportive people, as I say, both teachers ultimately. So to me, that has rubbed off to me in a different way. I just happen to be applying it in a slightly different industry these days.
wow. And then with the background of mathematics, how did it have been you to add into the trend into sales marketing though?
They're two different worlds. It's interesting. In some respects, I'm very glad I studied maths when I did, because it allowed me to, of my own time, get involved in learning about history and literature and art and those things. I think anybody who goes through learning formally art, language, history, geography, has a hard time learning about science because
Mm,
you need a foundational set of principles to keep on building in that world. So I
mm,
wouldn't class myself as an English scholar by any stretch, but I've read a lot of books. I'm very interested in history. I get fascinated by political machinations that go on. So I've managed to build through curiosity, through inquisitiveness, through exploring. I've always managed to find myself interested in things, and maths gives me that logic foundation, right? So I don't naturally and easily listen to something and make a jump. I'm trying
mm,
to build case that gets me there, and that's where my maths comes in, and certainly when I'm applying it to sales and marketing, right?
Yep.
Just because it's new, the CRM, right, or marketing stacks in the software business, there are over 8,000 software companies vying for position in that space. How do you make sense of it? The answer cannot be another marketing stack, another marketing piece of software. It has to be, what is the problem you're trying to fix? What are you trying to solve? What do you need to do that? And again, for a long time, I've argued that you think about people first, then you understand about the process, and then you say, what technology do we have that helps that process, that solves the people's problems? Too often we jump to, oh, new mousetrap, let's get that piece of technology and it will fix everything. And it doesn't. So that maths grounding, it gives me that logic that says if you start from the right position, you will have success in what you implement and what you do.
So it means that we really invest time to understanding the people that we are and doing the business with, and then before we jumping into giving them the solution that we see is best suited to the needs that they are having, right? Instead of jumping too quickly onto the boat and offering what we think best for them. Just slow down a little bit.
Exactly right. Exactly
Yep.
right. Let's slow down, take a breath. Let's understand what's going on here. Precisely.
Sure. John, you have a career growing really phenomenally and respectable for many of us. We would like to ask you, after the accounting job that you found out that it's not about the number, it's not about the job that you like to do, and then how your work in selling and marketing actually evolved and making you grow. And can you share with us that journey?
Sure, yes. So I mean, basically, when I got into selling, it was a British company I worked for, and it was a fundamental, what I call a Victorian company. They had a very strict idea of what selling was. I mean, this was in the days when, sort of cut your hair, shave the beard, don't have anything. This is how you present. But it gave me a very solid understanding of the very principles of what sales is about. Good training, had a really nice time there, a good time there. But as I was going through that, being inquisitive and looking around, the computer industry was really beginning to take off. So I made some conscious decisions at that time saying, okay, I understand selling. I'd been involved a little bit on the periphery of computing. The company I was working with was using very early computing technology in production lines and manufacturing. And I was looking at this whole world thinking, this could go further and there might be something a bit different to my normal route here. So I looked around and got involved in software consulting, essentially. So at the time, companies like Logica and Capgemini, those kind of organizations were really making a name for themselves as being people that understood this new thing, software technology, understood business, and bringing the two worlds together. And so I got myself into one of those companies, did pretty well in a marketing position in those days. And from there, a little company called Oracle rang me up one day and said, John, we'd like you to come and work for us. And so I had a little chat with them, and that's how I got properly into the computer industry as I was. And this is ancient Oracle. This is Oracle long before the Oracle you can think of it today. But that's how I got into the software industry properly. And it was Oracle that, having spent 4 years in Europe for Oracle, running all kinds of different campaigns, they said, love what you're doing there, come to America, come and make it work for us. So I moved to the States with Oracle, spent another 4 or 5 years with them. And from that point, kind of left a little bit of marketing behind. I did maybe 6 months in doing that, and then transitioned into an area where, a very technical area of the company, where they were building Oracle. If you go back a few years, the idea of Oracle was that it ran on any platform, right? So today, of course, it's going to run on all the platforms, but back then, not so common. And so we had marketing departments that talked about Oracle running on Hewlett Packard, Oracle running on Unix, Oracle running on IBM. And all these marketing departments essentially were competing with each other, saying, buy Oracle on HP, it's so much better than Oracle on Sun. And it's like, this is crazy. We're all Oracle. We're all one team. Why? So I was shifted into that organization to try and bring sense and integration to those different organizations to help them sell Oracle and not be so concerned with Oracle on their platform. And from that, we started building software on Oracle that helped them better communicate essentially between themselves and with the sales force, which ultimately became software that got embedded in Oracle's products. From there, they moved me to sales operations because I was now back close to sales again. So as I followed things that I found interesting, the companies seemed to sort of say, oh, in that case, you're better there, and kind of moved me around like a chess piece. And I enjoyed what I was doing. So I sometimes talk to people about my history as not so much as sales and marketing, but as a translator. And what I mean by that is that I listen to somebody talk. Sales and marketing, you go into any organization, sales thinks marketing sucks and marketing thinks sales sucks, and never the twain shall meet. They really don't like each other. Marketing don't understand sales. They're not at the show. There's good reason for them both parties. So I translated sales to marketing and marketing to sales. I translated English to American. For when I went to America, the idea that Europe was not the United States of Europe was something which people couldn't quite get their heads around. So this idea of just trying to sort of smooth the way, grease the wheels, if you will, for better understanding between different disciplines. George Bernard Shaw, I think, talked about America and England being two countries divided by a common language. I think that happens a lot. It's technology and business. You know, if you listen to a technologist talk, they go on and on and on about stuff that really and truly the business doesn't care about. And the technologist, on the whole, doesn't try to understand what the business is about. I'm trying to reduce that gap.
But John, I have a question also, before we move in further, because back then, Oracle is a company with a lot of amazing people, right? And those amazing leaders always trying to do best for the company and for the clients they serve. But how come how come the whole, like notion of, one department running everything for themselves, maybe competing with another department that running everything for themselves, and they don't understand, they don't realize that they are competing on, stepping on top of one another. And you all the way from England moving to the States and start to listen and start to make the change. And what happened to the organizations like that?
It comes down to how people are rewarded, right? So when you find yourself, if you find that your bonus is based on how much your product gets sold on a particular platform, you start doing unnatural acts. You start saying, well, I've got to get my product on the Sun product or on the IBM product, whatever it is, because that's where my bonus is, that's where my livelihood. And again, back in those days, Oracle was heavily driven by bonuses and sort of rewarding for success. So it's one of those things that be careful what targets you put in, because that will affect the outcomes that may and may not be what you actually were looking for. So I never got rid of it. The bonuses stayed there. But at the same time, they became more aware that if they were successful to the exclusion of all their fellows, then Oracle would not succeed as a whole, and therefore you will ultimately fail. So it's a leadership conversation, if you will, of what is something for the better good, the better all. But at the same time, the enemy is without, not within. So keep your eyes focused on that.
How did you engage to the first conversations like that? Because let me share why I asked this question. Some of our guest speakers, very famous one like John Carusi, also shared when he was first realized that this not working out within the organization, so he raised his concerns up, and then becoming a target of every other leaders in the organization to to pressure on him, because of raising the voice. But then you was raising the voice within the organization that grow drastically with a lot of, amazing, and then big ego heads also within that organization. How did you, build your case and communicating where it's not gonna, hurt every, the people involved, but then can, make them to contribute to the bigger picture though?
So one of the ways was, if I remember, I said around people, process, technology. So I knew people where I could see them all there. I was close to what the sales were doing. I talked about the fact that I managed to build software that started connecting dots between people. It was something which we called the corporate repository. And what it was essentially about was the idea that the sales force argued that the marketing department never did anything. They didn't send us any information. We're always out in the cold. We don't know what's going on. When you go to the sales offices, you find they had entire rooms stored with collateral that all these different departments were producing, to the point where they had producing so much that nobody in the sales office could actually do anything with it. And what was happening at the time, there was a transition going on in the world at large, that things were becoming digitized and the web coming along and things like that. So we built software that, rather than taking a piece of printed collateral and printed it and then hand shipped it to the other side of America to be kept in the closet and never found, we simply made it available online, which a customer could get through for the web, through an application that we wrote. They could even find a phone number, dial it, and have that piece of collateral faxed to them. Now, this was before document management systems were coming around, but that piece of software suddenly connected sales and marketing. And so what you get is that people start to understand, oh, John, he's not just like going on about this stuff. He's actually given us something that makes us more efficient. I can now get information out of marketing just like that. It happens overnight. And when they showed it to their customers, the customer said, oh, can I have one of those? That's really good. So suddenly this thing that we built internally for our own sales will start being sold out, certainly. And by that, you start winning over people's hearts and minds, because they're going, this is somebody who's built something that is useful. We're now finding our customers want it. We need to pay attention. So you not by wagging your finger, not by telling off, not by shouting, but simply saying, here is a better way, and building a following, if you will, around that. That's what I found anyway.
Wonderful. So what happened after Oracle? How the journey that making you to the CEO office though?
So from there, at the time, let me think about how this went. So I then moved to a company called Citibank in New York.
That's a different industry.
Very, very different industry, very different place. But what Citibank were doing at the time were essentially, they were losing lots of business to smaller upstarts in terms of their investment business. And they had lots of investment businesses all over the world, but it was very discombobulated. And what they did was create an overnight startup of 4,000 people. They took company said, you're now a startup, and by the way, we've got these people from Oracle who are going to show you how to do this better. that was the theory. So essentially, I was brought in along with a group of other people, and it was the CIO of Oracle that moved to Citibank, who rang me up one day and said, John, always loved what you did at Oracle. I've got a similar problem here. I've got to bring along a very different kind of group of people. They're called bankers. They're not computer savvy, but we've got to sort of bring them into the new world. So I joined and built a team to essentially rapid application development, the idea of building things and prototyping it within a week to show the bankers, this idea has now been codified, you can actually do this. It wasn't production systems by any stretch, but the idea of trying to understand how to improve the banker's lot by the use of technology. Again, what is your banker? What is the problem you're having as a bank? What are you trying to do for your customers? How are you trying to... Simple example.
Mm.
One of the biggest complaints from Citibank customers at the time was if they called the call center or went on the web or went into a bank or checked their online banking account, they would never get it all. You could never tell your exact balance in the same way. There'd be 4 different balances. Why was that? Because all the systems were syncing at different times of the night. So I took $100 out today, and that's reflected off my current account, but the call center system hasn't yet been updated. That doesn't give you a lot of satisfaction from the customers that you know what you're doing. If depending on who I call, gives me a different bank balance. So while we're solving that is to put in place systems that says can actually sync this stuff all live and at once. So simple things that sort of the bankers said, well, we're a Citibank. Of course we're going to be right. There's no reason not to trust us. There wasn't, but there was, because you weren't showing the right system. So very simple problems like that, trying to sort of, help the bankers along with their ideas. Again, not being technology first by any stretch. What are the problems we're trying to fix here?
And then what happened after Citibank?
Citibank, from there, we then get into startup land. We'd spent sort of a long time in large corporations solving problems, and startups were becoming big. And we took the idea, that system that I built in Oracle, we decided to turn it into a fully functioning startup. And so we built that up, and we had an architecture that allowed us to integrate different systems into a single portal. This is a long time ago. Raised money for it starting, and abstract failure at the end of the day. The reason being we got hit by the .bomb at the time, and we all sort of all went out of business. And then from there, a series of marketing roles in basically software technology companies, so a telco, a middleware company, a email service provider, all kinds of different organizations who are all basically licking their wounds after the crash to re-emerge and rebuild. So by that time I was known as the dude who sort of knew how to solve software problems, not software problems, but how to use software to solve problems. Funnily enough, my final job after all those different positions, I did a journey back into the UK at one point, worked for a company there, to a software as a service play, all kinds of different things going on. And one day the guy that phoned me up, that took me to Citibank, phoned me and said, I need your help again, John, come and join me in this company. And that was my last company, Lyris, which is where the email service provider, which is where I was the CEO. So again, similar problem, lots and lots of technology, lots and lots of problems, and no real gelling. How do we actually make that fix?
John, throughout your whole journey, there's a lot of works that you do related. Every work that you do related to fixing problem, the existing problem, small to large, right? And then fixing problem requires a lot of thinking. And my wife and I has been in a journey to help people, expand their ability to think, because we believe that, the current stage where we see that the level of thinking of our people actually is not increasing, but actually somewhere show declining, sign of declining. So every time that we got a chance to talk to experts like you are, we would love to understand, throughout your career up until now, how did you do the thinking? How do you think and process the thinking?
How do I think? Oh my goodness. Well, firstly, I like to think that I think a lot. Again, to me, a lot of my interest in life comes down to this funny little thing called curiosity. This idea of what exactly is, why is that happening? What's going on? So to me, thinking, I'm not clever enough to do the big sort of philosophical, conceptual things. I like to read about it, but that's not the kind of thinking I do. But the thinking I do is, how do you make the lot of that particular person you're working with better? How do you improve their life? So in the world that I've lived in, which is, you know, sales and marketing in the software technology industry, it's how do you make the life of your customers, your partners, your staff, people at large, how do you make it better as a result of whatever this thing is that you've got in your hands that can improve? So it's essentially, thinking to me is peeling back the onion, right? So it's this idea of, you go to a doctor and your arm's hurting. The doctor doesn't automatically put your arm in a cast. The doctor has a look around, and he might well find that you've got a pinched nerve in your lower back that's causing the arm. In other words, your symptoms don't necessarily correlate to what goes on in your body. Likewise in business, right? Dear John, I need you to come in and solve my problem for me. My sales aren't working. We need to fire the head of sales. Okay, let's examine it. Why? Well, because our sales are down. Why are your sales down? I don't know, but it's his fault, and therefore he needs to go. Was he a good salesman before he came? Oh, he was great. He obviously has just failed while he's here. And you keep on peeling back to understand, why is this person now failing when he was brilliant before and now coming through? So you start to unpack and understand that maybe your product hasn't moved along quite as well, or maybe the market you're in is saturated and we need to open up a new market. Maybe we need to offer a different extension, whatever it might be, to peel back the onion, to solve that problem, to think, to say, there's no need just to get rid of people because something's not working. What you need to understand is why. Now, it might well be the person is not the right person. Not everybody fits in the right place at the right time. But understanding what the basic cause of whatever's going wrong is, and indeed, is it right? I mean, just because you haven't doubled your sales again, like you have for the past 4 years, actually to double every year for 4 years is quite going some. Maybe you should try and think about the profitability of the company. So to me, the thinking is just simply trying to understand this thing that's been presented to me, what's going on, and why is it happening.
Wow. John, we have a lot of business leaders who excels in this region, but then, you know, they have a mentality, mindset of being that, then doesn't know it all. And then every time we talk to them, you know, it's just like the onion is not peeling, but it's keep adding more layers to it, and we talk to the wall instead of talking to somebody to build a great conversation together. So for that many years, how do you feed the curiosity within yourself so that you continue to have more careers and to stay curious a little longer?
Well, for a start, you'll notice that other than my early days when I spent a lot of time at Oracle, I keep on moving, right? So to me, we've now, if we get to a point where you fix the problem, whatever that means, it's time to find more problems, right? There's no point in me hanging around and doing the same. So I'm always looking for the next problem. So to me right now, the big problem I look around at, you know, people talk about the future of work and where all that's going, what we're going to do with AI, robotics, etc. The next problem is, how do we manage and handle people inside the corporation, right? So that's the next big problem in my mind. So to me, the answer to your question is, I'm looking, there are nearly 8 billion people on planet Earth. That's 8 billion different sets of problems. I won't run out, right? The problems that you've got and your wife have got with the business that you're in is very different to what's going over there. I'm not an advocate of books, you know, the book style, 10 things that I did and I was successful because of those 10 things. It depends on the context. I'm not saying those are bad ideas, but doing those 10 things will not fix things for you. So to me, understanding the problem is understanding the context of where you're in. That's partly what my book's about, right? So there's an interesting conundrum. How do you plan for the unexpected? Because if you plan for the unexpected, then it's expected because you're planning for it.
So it's becoming expected.
Yeah. So
Yep.
so you can't plan for the unexpected, except I believe you can. It's a little bit like education, that you can't take somebody through a university course says this is what you're going to need, the skills you're going to need for year 2. You need to know the skills for your 20 years out. How do you learn and reskill yourself over and over and over again in life to keep on succeeding, being ahead of the curve? So to me, this idea of you've done it once, everybody's different. Now, the fact I managed to switch a licensed business to a software as a service business within a year for this software company in San Francisco, if the same problem was given to me today, I wouldn't dig out the playbook from then. I'd want to reinvestigate. We got a different set of people. It's slightly different software. There is slightly different marketplaces. We're going to have to examine what goes on in here. So that curiosity is, I ran a consulting company in London for a while, doing something called structured visual thinking. And one of our favorite things was, we used to say, the last thing you ever need near a problem is an expert. Okay,
That's why.
because an expert will come in and say, when I did this this is what I did, and that will be your solution. No, it's what is your problem? Why is it different? Give $10 million to IBM, and they will tell you that the answer is some new machinery. Give $10 million to Oracle, they'll say you need a new database. Give $10 million to WPP, they'll say you need a new brand advertising. You need somebody that's impartial, that says, what's the problem you're trying to fix? That's always different. It changes over time, checking the context, and so on and so forth. So the job doesn't run out.
So since 2016 until now, you've been running your own company, People First, right? And
Yes.
for those who are looking for the services, at People First, what is that benefit them from, getting the service from your organization, John?
Well, the People First business, the main focus at the moment has always been into the corporation, right? So the idea is that you're a company that you know about John. John's going to essentially do a People First solution to my sales process, my marketing process. I tend not to get too involved in something called the OD, if you will, Organization Development, HR, even though the name People First has that connotation. I'm much more interested in how do we actually take the company, grow its revenue, grow its profits, and motivate the people in, as I say, a positive and respectful way. So if that's what the company is trying to work out how to do, then I'm your solution for it. They can go to my site, peoplefirst.business, and find out all of that. The flip side of that, it even now still hasn't been launched, is the opposite side. If you're an individual, a private person, what can you do? And that's slightly where the book comes in. Right, because the book is based on years and years and years of having done what I've done in corporate environments. But actually, the rules of what you do is no different for what any single person can do. Right, so it's a transform, transition, transcend is the 3T model of the book. And what I'm looking to do right now is taking that book and building workshops around it to help people go through and for the unexpected, not to give them, if we could plan for the unexpected, COVID wouldn't have knocked the world out like it did. Nobody was planning for that. There's 2 lone voices saying it somewhere, but nobody knew that was coming. And but the people, the agile companies, the people that could very quickly react to changing nature of what was going on in the supply chain, what was happening if your staff couldn't come to work, and so on and so forth, succeeded. The ones that could move online really quickly started to succeed. So what could any business do the next time something comes along? It won't be a COVID, it'll be something totally different, right? In massive recession, whatever it's going to be. So that's what the book's about, and that's much more about helping the individual and the small business as opposed to the larger corporation. But it's the same problem. It's the same problem, whether Citibank and Oracle are trying to fix it, or if sort of HP are trying to fix it, or if General Motors, it's all the same issue, because at the end of the day, all those companies are made up of people. And We all have our own issues and our own problems. That's
8
what it's about.
billion people, right? 8 billion different set of issues that you're not gonna run out of business. John,
That's right.
with that being said, I would love to get into a journey of writing your book and what is that you want to show the world in the book. um, the notion of change is inevitable, and change is inevitable, right? Change is expected and accelerating, and things that has been there for a long time. And the COVID situation has knocked everybody down, in terms of the world they knew. And we would love to hear your story of why business leader being slapped on the face for the word that they thought they knew. Can you share us that?
So you asked earlier on about when I was a kid. One of the things that has been in my mind ever since I was a kid is I wanted to write a book, right? So I've often had this thing, I want to write a book. I have no idea what it's about. And I knew it wasn't ever going to be a storybook. It had to be a book based on fact and so I've been wrestling with this, and the people first things were emerging. And I've got 2 or 3 books in the back of my head that were all there, all bubbling to the top. And Mitchell, who you mentioned earlier on, I'd been introduced to, and he and I had bounced back and forth about sort of doing a book. And it was not until COVID actually happened that it really started gelling, right? So I'd started already down the path of a workbook, if you will. So my book is not a book that you read from beginning to end, so that put it away. It's an active live book that you take, you work through it, you put it away, you dig it out. It's written specifically to have little nuggets and lots of places to write your own notes about what you're doing. So when you're writing a book like that, it's like, what is it that drives somebody to think about that? What makes somebody think I need a book that's going to help me, whatever that is, right? So, and there's this whole category of books called self-help books, and it's not a self-help book. I don't do that world. So I was wrestling with what is the problem that this book is solving, and then COVID happened. And so what happens with that is, as you suddenly start seeing businesses all over the world, big and small, being thumped and hammered into the ground, and people suffering and lockdowns occurring, you start looking at your own book and you go, oh, what do business leaders do when they're slapped in the face by a world they thought they knew? And from there, the book started to coalesce. And I worked closely with Mitchell during the COVID year, essentially, and got it out sort of COVID half year, whatever it was. And got it out in the August timeframe, I guess, something of that order. So it was a long time in the coming, but once I got that, this is the problem we're answering, right? That's what I'd been missing until that point. Until COVID came, I didn't know what the problem was. Once COVID came, everything else fell into place.
So that's the transformation method that you written on the book that we intrigued to understand about that. Would you share about this to us, please?
Sure. So the 3 T's: transform, transition, transcend. So transformation is really about you, the individual, right? So remember, this is written from the perspective of a business leader. But every business leader is their own person. So whether you're the CEO of a small company, whether you're a team leader, CEO of whoever you are, you have a personal transformational journey in front of you. And the journey is understanding who you are and where you want to be. Right? So there's a discovery process of, here I am, John, and I want to be this. And so you start building a story around your own personal transformation. And that transformation is the context of what you want to do with your company, which is the transition stage. And transition is multiple transformations or different people in your organization coming together to transition the company. So if you take, for example, let's pick a Wolfgang Puck, right? Runs restaurants all over the world, and it's a restaurant business. That's what he does, and he's very good at it. And then suddenly his restaurants are closed. And suddenly nobody can go and eat at his restaurants. what should he do, right? Now, his transformational journey is, well, I'm Wolfgang Puck. I can do these things. I need to change things. I need to change myself. But there's no point in him coming in as a leader and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. He has to bring other people within his organization as well. So multiple people in the Wolfgang Puck organization come together to think about what they're doing, and those ideas gel together to get the transition of, oh, this is what we're going to do to transition our business. We have multiple people coming together, multiple people solving this problem to say, what do we do to create agility, to change the way we are doing this, so that you can do the final stage, which is transcend. And transcend ideally is that you had these goals, and now we're going to take to these goals, because we've changed the way you're looking at your business. Well, why is it for, and picking on the restaurant business, if the restaurants have to go to home delivery and takeaway because they can't have people inside the restaurants, why aren't they for them to do that? But who moved quickly? Uber Eats and companies like that started coming out. And what they did is that they took all the profits off the restaurants. Uber Eats makes the profit. The restaurant is still in the doldrums. So you have to, a restaurant might say, oh, but my restaurant, it's the dining experience. Everybody comes, they want the waiter or what have you. But you can't have that now. There is a new world that's going to be around. You've got to transition. So you have to get through how you actually make that transition. And you have to let go of preconceived notions. And as I say, what's right is for some is not right for others. So one restaurant might choose to do it this way. Other restaurants might choose it in a different way. So that's what the story is. Transform, transition, transcend, working in all stages through discovery of understanding who you are, where you want to be, the journey is going to take you there, the roadmap. Roadmap's got roadblocks. Come out. How do you get around the roadblock? Come back down. To understand what you're going to need to do to succeed in this very new and changed world. Because, COVID is over. Except it's not, right? As we're seeing what's happening in China right now, and as you see what's going on around the world, it's still very much there. People still are having to close because of COVID occurring. So it's here for a while. So what can businesses do to make sure they're still relevant? That's what the book's about. It's a very short book.
Congratulations, John, for writing the book and the dream that you've been having since you were young, right? Since you were a kid.
Yes.
Yeah, and it has been a year. It's about to be getting its first year anniversary already. So, John, I like to ask you this question: in the world of constant change like this, right? And then for the history of the experience you've been working with companies, with people around you. If that's boiled down to one skill that leader needs to be having and master it, so that they can live up onto the transformation, transition, and transform process like this, what is the one most important skill you think it is, John?
You are but one person in 8 billion.
Yes. So to you.
So you don't know the answers. You don't know everything. So the one thing you can do is reach out to others, to your partners, to your partner, to your competition, to your vendors, to your staff, to your customers. Ask them what they want. Bring that collaborative thinking into your thinking, because whatever you are planning to do, it will be a lot stronger if you understand whatever else is going on. So that partly is curiosity. The people that don't have curiosity don't actually ask other people what they're thinking. Right. So to me, that curiosity, collaboration, that's being interested in others and not so much interested in what I've got tons of ideas I can talk about until the cows come home, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is what all those other people are doing and how can they be brought together to produce something that's better than they have today. So if I was saying one thing, it's collaborate, work with others, whoever they are, mentors, partners, coaches, competition, I don't care. Talk to everybody. I'm talking to them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And the last question, John, I would like to ask you for today is that we understand your past already. We understand the outstanding career that you've been having, and we understand the works that you introduce to the world now. And I always like to understand the future also. So is there anything exciting, John, you are working on that you would want to share now so we can celebrate together?
There's so many things I'm working on and thinking about now. Let me pick one of those, which is just an idea that I've been noodling for a while, and I've not really got into a concrete form. And that's something called the future of work.
Future of work, yes.
The future of work, right? So a lot of people talk about the future of work and whether it's going away, whether we're all going to be replaced by machines, and whatever else it might be.
Mm.
I'm much more interested in understanding there isn't a future of work. Hold that thought. There is no future of work. There is something called the future of income.
Mm.
And the future of income is a much more interesting question because income is how you generate wealth.
Mm.
So when you read people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk earn God knows how many millions a second that they do, nobody in the right mind thinks they're being paid for that. Right? But when you go further down into an organization, you get to annual salaries, monthly salaries, hourly rates. We're being paid for time. And as long as you're paid for time, you will not become wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
So the point of the future of income is how can any single individual take all their assets, not just their time, but their knowledge, their skill. Think about what you do yourself, right? You have got only 24 hours a day. It doesn't matter which way you cut it, that's your time.
Mm-hmm.
For you to generate real wealth, you have to make money that's separate to time.
Yep.
Yeah. So everybody should be thinking about this. I don't want to find people saying, I want to increase my wage from $14 to $15 or whatever it might be. I want them to be paid for the value that they deliver to that organization. Now, non-trivial. This is not a simple equation. But if we don't fix this, there's a societal problem hurtling towards us. And it goes as follows. If you choose any business today and compare to where it was, say, 70 years ago, they will have 1/10 of the number of people with a market cap 10 times, roughly speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So in that time, the population of the world has doubled. So it now means that there's orders of magnitude more people that aren't working in large corporations. Corporations are spending all their time. They used to call it outsourcing, offshoring, robotics, automation, gig economy, whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's about getting people off the books and still getting the work done.
Mm-hmm.
If every company succeeds in getting people off the books, every company, where do people earn the money to buy the stuff that the companies are producing? Because they're no longer employed by those companies, because they've been automated. So every single person has to think about how to generate wealth for themselves, income for themselves, not what the future of their next job is, but what the future of their next, they're going to live on planet Earth for 80 years. You yourself have probably got another good 50 years to go. Wow. Where's the wealth going to come to keep you going?
Wow.
That's what I'm thinking about at the moment.
John, it's very, very big thing that you're working on. Thanks so much for doing that. Because the whole, leaders in the HR industry been doing in the past year, 5-6 years, talking about the future of works, where basically, helping people to still getting a job and getting paid for the time that they put onto the job, right? And then the model you're working on is absolutely for a wealth building, but based on the collaborative assets and everything that a person can put onto their lives, right? Not only the hours working, so we don't want them to, continue working and get paid by the hour, but find different ways, different source of income so that they can move up into the ladder. So if that can be translated to a practical tool, practical ways that people can apply to their lives, I think the quality of lives will be a lot better, and the meaning of works also will be a lot better, rather than just upskill and reskill the employees to get into the future and compete with machine and compete with with the unexpected changes. Yeah.
I mean, as a real life example, right? So rather to reduce it, from airy fairy down to practical, right? So if you take a company like Uber, if Uber was a true ride sharing business, not a capitalist driven business where people are working in the gig economy, but a ride sharing business, I would then, as a driver, have a share in the success of that company. I could buy a second car and a third car, and indeed, as self-driving cars become available, I could have a fleet of self-driving cars. If I own a house that has a large lawn now because I got a large ground, where is my app that allows me to rent that mower out to my friends and neighbors? Right? And the apps are there, but it's always about me giving you my asset and then somebody else making money out of it. What I'm trying to work out is how can we actually have a truly sharing economy where the people that own the assets are the ones that build the wealth. That's what I mean about the future of the future of income, because the income doesn't have to come from your time. It comes from you leveraging your assets, and your assets are your house, your Airbnb. You can rent out a space, but they take 30% of your money.
Yep.
Where's the equality? So those are the things that I think about.
and that is where organizations really put their people first, not only thinking about paying them the monthly salary plus the incentive plus the yearly bonus, but where else in their P&L, the employees can have sharings of the organization, so it can sustainably growing both sides, the employer and the employees, right? John,
Exactly.
thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming to our show and sharing, the journey you've been doing, and there's a lot of things in here today that we, the audience, will be benefiting from listening to. What you share. There's a lot of wisdom from the works that you do, and a lot of thinking to add values to the lives of the people that are around us. And I wish you well. I wish you all the best, John, and continue to build more ideas, to bring more ideas to us, and because we needed that, we need to change the way we think, the way we operate, so that we can get into the new world of income, not the world of work anymore, John. And
There we go.
if ever you guys travel to my country, please shout out to Vivian and I, and then we'll be so excited to welcome you to my country and take you guys around.
It would be lovely. I have never been to Vietnam, so yes, I might take you up on that offer. But thank you so much for having me as a guest today. It's been wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You have a beautiful day.
Thank you now. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.